And that's going to 75% over the next year. And that really is now fueling the multiplier effect. For every dollar spent on an NVIDIA chip, there's an $8 to $10 multiplier across the rest of tech. So what that basically means is that what we're seeing with NVIDIA is just the start of this massive spending wave. And I think when you think about what that spending wave is, it's going to be on the consumer piece when it comes to advertising. That's why our view, I mean, Meta, you could see a 4-digit stock because they're just starting to monetize those 3.5 billion users from an advertising perspective. Now, some could say, for let's say Meta, okay, the stock's gone from 85 to 700, it's expensive. See, I disagree. I actually think Meta and I'd say Google are just on the cusp of from an advertising perspective, they're going to be monetizing AI for years to come. I don't believe a lot of that is factored into these stocks. And, you know, I think when you think about AI, you could look at it from NVIDIA, you could look at it from the advertising side from Meta, Google. I continue to think the most undervalued AI name in the market is Tesla, because I view Tesla as a disruptive technology player where autonomous is worth $1 trillion alone. And I believe the actual valuation of Tesla is $2 trillion, and that's base valuation. That doesn't include Optimus. Because 90% of the value of Tesla going forward is going to be about autonomous and robotics. Some could get caught up in deliveries, quarter to quarter, Musk when it comes to Doge and some of the perceived brand issues of Tesla. I actually think that's just noise, because over the coming years, autonomous is going to far outnumber, from a valuation perspective, anything we see in Tesla today. And I think as you start to see FSD and you start to see more level 4 and more of this technology come out, and I believe like the best bet Musk ever made was on Trump, because the autonomous roadmap from a federal perspective is now going to start to be deployed, and that's probably been the biggest impediment to Tesla. When you think about no federal roadmap in terms of the U.S. And I think that's just starting. I mean, we believe by 2030, you're going to have 10 to 15% of cars on the road are going to be autonomous, 20 to 25% of ride shares, Uber, Lyft, whatever it may be, are going to be autonomous. And Tesla, in terms of cyber cabs or robotaxis, we're talking about something that's going to be here within a year. Not 10 years, within a year. And I think robotics, when it comes to Optimus, and NVIDIA clearly is going down the robotics as well, it's just the start of the robotics era. And I continue to view physical AI, autonomous robotics, as potentially bigger than all of AI use cases out there. And I view, it just goes back to valuation. The reason I believe tech stocks are up another 25% this year, and we're only less than halfway through the tech bull market, is because this is the beginning of more than even just the fourth industrial revolution. It's something we probably haven't seen in the last 60, 70 years. And it starts with Mag 7, starts with the US tech, but it's about the multiplier. I think software is going to be front and center. That's why Palantir has been one of our top names. Names like ServiceNow, Salesforce.com, MongoDB. It's just the start of the software AI use cases playing out. And I think where investors get caught off guard is when a DeepSeek could take NVIDIA down 17%, in one day. I think it shows the overall nervousness in terms of valuations and in terms of everything that we're seeing. I was an analyst in the dot-com bubble, so I saw it front and center. To compare dot-com bubble to today, it's apples to oranges. Dot-com bubble, the average tech company was trading at 32 times revenues. Today, it's 30 times earnings. 2, go back dot-com bubble, that was really companies that were fueled based on startup valuations, business models that were frothy. What's the AI revolution being driven by today? It's big tech that has 1.2 trillion of cash on the balance sheet and generates 385 billion a year of cash flow. And the use case, in terms of the real use cases, what we're seeing in terms of AI, in terms of these build-outs, it's unprecedented. It's nothing we've ever seen. And my whole argument with valuation, it comes down to the haters hate, as I've always talked about, and the bears, when they're in hibernation mode, with their spreadsheets, wearing their vests, no sleeves, they can't find AI in the spreadsheets. And that's how so many have missed out on the transformational tech revolution that we've seen over the last, not just 10 years, 15, but especially over the last 3 to 4 years. And the bears, they hate NASDAQ at 2,000. They despise it at 20,000. And it just goes back to, I'll pay up for tech stocks in the left lane in a Ferrari going 100 miles an hour, where a lot of the low growth value names, they're in a minivan in the right lane going 40 miles an hour with a broken radio and a bumper sticker saying my kid was an honor student in 3rd grade. So it speaks to where this is all going. I believe it's get the popcorn out. We believe this AI party, it's 10 p.m., it was 9 p.m. about a year ago, and the party goes to 4 a.m. And it's just really the beginning of this tech AI revolution. I think, in another area where I think investors, I think it's very important to distinguish is that you look at names like Apple, where sentiment has been very negative on Apple. China headwinds, they haven't been able to grow significantly in terms of iPhone demand, but yet the stock continues to move higher. Like why? Like why does that make sense? Because it's our view, 25% of the world consumer is going to access AI through an Apple device. It's all about install base. 1.5 billion iPhones worldwide, 2.4 billion iOS devices. Install base is the key to success that we're going to see in AI. Now with Apple, the knee-jerk would be Apple Intelligence, chat. I don't really see, there's nothing there that makes me think this is so exciting. Yet, the biggest revenue opportunity for Apple, it's going to be developers building hundreds of applications on top of Apple Intelligence over the next few years, and that's going to be the monetization opportunity. And I just go back, for me, historically, 2007, being at the iPhone launch, Steve Jobs. I come out of there being like, this is going to change the world. A year later, financial crisis hits, and everyone's like, iPhone, it's just going to be a 1 year, 2 year cycle. People aren't going to pay for an iPhone. You have BlackBerry, and you have Nokia. Remember, at that time, BlackBerry and Nokia both had user bases of 1 billion. What investors, I think, didn't understand, but it's another example of kind of learning from it to where I think we're heading. It's about the services business. I mean, It's all about monetization of services, and that's how Apple's been able to distinguish itself. And we think the services business is worth $2 trillion alone, just that services business. Now, more and more, especially with AI, some of the parts valuation is going to be key. It goes back to Tesla. If you want to value Tesla just on the amount of cars they sell and what earnings looks like over the next 2 years, you'll miss what I view as probably the biggest transformational name in the market. Because it's about where is this heading over the next 3, 4, 5 years. Palantir is another example, right? The Messi of AI. They hate the stock at 12, despise it at 14, say it's expensive at 50. At 75, they're yelling from the top of the mountains. And now at 120, they're in their basements, waiting for their mom to bring chicken parm down to the basement. So the point is that this is, it's another example of you don't sit there and just focus on valuation. You have to understand where growth is heading. Where's Tesla's heading? Where Meta's heading? Where Apple's heading? What are the next derivatives? If I sat here 2 years ago, it was buy NVIDIA, buy Microsoft. Buy NVIDIA, buy Microsoft. Now, it's you own Mag 7, but now it's who's the second, third, fourth derivative? Who are the software plays? Who's going to fuel these data centers? The energy plays, the nuclear plays, names like ACO and others. How do you play the infrastructure? So I don't view AI just as Mag 7. I view it as derivatives that are starting to play out. When you look at autonomous, I believe autonomous is going to be the biggest AI use case. I mean, where I see things heading is eventually other automakers are going to have to OEM technology from Tesla for autonomous. Those that think Waymo, just like Waymo's had a partnership with Uber and others, I mean, Waymo are $240,000 cars. They're not going to scale. So I think we're in such an exciting period of time, but everyone's always worried about what if. So let's say like US-China tariff, Trump. Is this going to ruin the AI trade? For anyone that's ever played poker in Vegas, that's what this is. We're at the baccarat table, however you want to think about it. Every move you can't get so scared of. It's all a game of poker in a broader negotiation. And I think that's what we're going to see continue to play out. I believe the best thing that ever happened to tech was Trump. Regardless of what side of the aisle you are, the reality is that it's a deregulatory environment, and that's going to be very, very important in terms of AI innovation, autonomous, as well as other broader big tech. And also, Khan at the FTC is gone. That means a lot more M&A that's going to come down the pike from a tech perspective, which is very strong for small caps, mid caps. And then when I start to look out in terms of where the spending is going to be, you're going to have massive AI spend in the Beltway. That's bullish for the likes of Palantir, Oracle, Microsoft, big tech players. And a lot of times people say, like, can big tech continue to lead the market higher? I think big tech continues to lead the market higher. I don't see that changing. I actually think the strong just get stronger in terms of where this is all heading. But I do believe, as an investor, you have to focus on who are going to be the second, third, fourth derivatives. And when we have moments like a DeepSeek and tech's getting crushed, just like in like Tokyo Black Monday with currency, trade, Fed, tariffs, DeepSeek, whatever it may be, these are more opportunities to own names when they sell off. And I think you have to be disciplined, right? I mean, Look, when we were here in October, Tesla's what, 160? It's $200 higher, right? I mean, the point is, if you get too caught up during this AI revolution in the headline risk, I think you'll miss the ways to own it. And when I look at from a spending perspective, we're only really in the first stage of the AI build-out. I mean, only 4% of enterprises in the US have embarked down AI. So just think about that. 4% in the US. So now, as you start to have more government, sovereign, more enterprises in the US, Europe's nowhere, right? Europe's afraid of their own shadow from a data privacy perspective. That's why you see France trying to get more and more in terms of focus on AI at the conference last week. Okay, now Europe gets in. You look at Asia. And my view is, I'm not a view that it's US or China. My view is like, I'm almost agnostic from when you think about like a broader view, US tech continues to be the way to play. But I can make arguments that Alibaba's cheap, K-Web's cheap, China tech's cheap. So I don't view it's like a zero-sum game. Like both can go up because it keeps coming down to $2 trillion over the next 3 years in an AI arms race as it all plays out. And I think there's so many opportunities to invest in this theme because there's going to be so many, and I think you're already starting to see it, small mid-cap names that were not even on the radar. I mean, just think about it. A year ago, does anyone know Palantir, right? We'd scream at the streets, the haters come at us, the hate mail, and now Palantir's been a 10-bagger, right, the last 18 months. But if I told you own Palantir a year ago, there's like, well, they're government focused, the CEO, the stock's expensive, there's 100 reasons. But it comes down to execution. They're probably the core AI play when it comes to software. And I believe Palantir is the next Oracle or Salesforce. I think they could be $1 trillion, I think a $1 trillion market cap when I look at a name like Palantir. So I think with a lot of these names, you always have the opportunities. They sell off on earnings, they hit technicals, sentiment gets negative, worrying about the Fed, inflation, US-China tariff, trade negotiations. The reality is like US needs China, China needs US. There's going to be some negotiation that ultimately happens, but I don't believe that US-China tensions ruins the AI revolution or really crimps the supply chain. But the opportunities are, in the uncertainty, that's where you get the opportunities to own these names. I think that's where, if I think back over the last few years, even when it comes to NVIDIA, how many times have we gone through NVIDIA the last 2 years? Probably 5 or 6 times a year. Sell-offs happen, the bears come out of hibernation mode, this is it. And I think right now, demand to supply, we've talked about. I mean, I think it's 15 to 1 from a demand to supply perspective. And I think as you've seen ebbs and flows with like AMD and others, you start to realize more and more there's really only one chip play in terms of the AI revolution, it's NVIDIA. But if I think about over the last 12 to 18 months, there have been a lot of scares with Alphabet, antitrust worries, stock goes to 150. Now look at it. Like, Microsoft's a name that I think significantly languished and underperformed, and I think that's a name that is actually just on the cusp of seeing massive growth as more and more enterprises move to the cloud with Microsoft, Copilot, and more of these use cases are deployed. And then I think about areas like cybersecurity, like how do you protect these workloads? That's where I think cybersecurity is going to play a huge role. in terms of names like Palo Alto, Zscaler, CyberArk, CrowdStrike, because you need to protect the workloads as they ultimately all play out. And the reason I believe tech stocks are going to be up 25% this year, and I believe in the next year or two, we're going to be talking about NASDAQ 25,000, is because we are only less than halfway through this tech bull market. And I keep going back to, you know, my whole career, I've been in so many meetings, thousands of them, where investors are like, this stock's expensive, you can't own it, it makes no sense, valuation, 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 valuation. But you have to be able on the transformational tech names to look beyond 1 year valuation and where this is going over the next 3, 4, 5 years. You got to see ahead. And that really, that's the way that we call tech stocks, right? We do a ton of work, traveling around the globe, understanding the trends, picking the winners, and a lot of times, like, you don't trade them, you own them. And I think there's a lot of opportunities, more and more, to own different pieces of the AI revolution as it plays out. Again, it started off as NVIDIA and the hyperscalers. Started off as really 4 or 5 ways to play it through Mag 7. I could argue now you're going to have 25, 30, 35 names to play it. And eventually 40, 45. Because as it spreads, for every dollar spent on a video chip, $8, $10 multiply across the rest of tech, that will create names where they might be viewed as just a regular software company. Next thing you know, they become more use cases. I mean, today we have 85 use cases in terms of AI. A year ago, it was less than 10. So it shows the monetization of the theme is actually happening right in front of us. Now, I think sometimes, in terms of quarterly earnings, you want to see the numbers right there, right? But it takes time. CapEx, big tech's going to spend, what, $325 billion this year? $100 billion more than a year ago. But let's even like go back to how this is playing out. DeepSeek comes out. If they could spend $6 million and not use NVIDIA next-gen hardware, what does this mean for the rest of big tech? It comes down to, look, they spend $6 million on this, like I'm playing in the NBA this week, okay?